Okay, I'm here with Dr. Robert Brooks. Dr. Brooks is a psychologist on the faculty of Harvard Medical School and the staff of McLean's Hospital. He is an award-winning speaker, educator, and author. He's the author of many books, including The Power of Resilience, Raising a Self-Disciplined Child, Raising a Resilient Children, and many others. Thank you, Dr. Brooks, for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
It's a pleasure to be with you today, Jack.
Well, it's really been an honor to plan your workshops for over a decade now. And in the past, we had you come in for a 1 day only. And this is the first time you're coming in to share your wonderful ideas for 3 full days at the conference in Calgary. It's going to be really special.
Well, I'm delighted to do so because, as you know, I've always told you this. I think your conferences are so well run, and I always feel so welcome, and the audiences are always so responsive to the ideas that I presented. So having 3 days, I'll even feel more fulfilled.
Right. And we'll also have your longtime colleague, Dr. Sam Goldstein,
Right.
at the conference.
Yeah, that should be a lot of fun because, I have a lot of fun together.
Yeah. Now, we have a couple of questions, actually 4 questions I wanted to ask you. You will be offering a keynote on day 1 on the topic, can you take care of students if you don't take care of yourself? What prompted you to want to open the conference with this topic, and what are a few key points you plan to address?
Yeah, I'm really pleased that you allowed me to open the conference with that particular topic. Part of it arose from the fact that the first couple of books actually I co-authored with Sam Goldstein had to do with raising resilience in children or raising resilience in students if it was geared for teachers. Jack, I cannot tell you how many parents and teachers and other caregivers, after talking about helping kids to be more resilient, would ask me, wait a second, Bob, can we help kids to be resilient if we're feeling very stressed out, if we're not feeling very resilient ourselves? The quick answer is it's going to be much more difficult. So more and more I've been requested actually to first speak about how do we help ourselves to be less stressed? Because if we were too stressed, it'll be very difficult for people to use the many ideas and strategies I'm going to discuss. So in my talk, I really plan to look at what we can do, not as teachers or parents or any kind of caregivers. What can we do in our own lives to be less stressed and more resilient? And I plan to cover a few key points, things that, and this is the important thing, things that I think we can all do. Not that they're easy, but they're within our control to do. So I'm going to talk about the relationships we develop and that we have. I'm going to talk about a very interesting concept that some psychologists call TLCs. And the first time I heard TLC, I was thinking, of tender loving care. Well, it's almost like that, but for ourselves, it's called therapeutic lifestyle changes. And these are changes we can make in our lifestyle that we have control over. Again, I'm not saying it's easy, that will help us to be less stressed. So if you're a parent or you're going into the classroom, you have certain techniques and strategies that you can use. As you know, for me, I always feel it's very important that people walk away from any of my presentations feeling that they've not only learned new information, but that they can apply it right after the presentation. Because I always feel, what good is having abstract ideas if they're not applicable in the real world? So what I'm hoping in this very first talk then, the very first keynote, is that people then will be much better equipped to hear all of the other ideas, not only I, but the other speakers are going to speak about, and feel more confident in being able to use them.
Excellent. It's a very important topic for teachers and mental health professionals. Now, you have often stated that one of your most challenging and stressful positions you held in your career was as a principal of a school in a locked door unit of a child and adolescent program in a psychiatric hospital. You have also said that it was a transformative experience for you in terms of developing a strength-based model. Could you describe what you learned in your role as principal?
Yes, I can smile about it now, but I'll tell you a number of things I learned. I had worked with some very difficult kids before and challenging kids in a therapeutic day program and just in therapy. And then an opportunity came up at McLean Hospital. It's a psychiatric hospital. It's a psychiatric teaching hospital for Harvard Medical School.
Mhm.
They've been around since 1811, Jack, but they did not have services for children or adolescents until the 1970s. And I got a call and was given some work I was doing in the inner city of Boston, in the Boston schools, to be the first principal of the school in the psychiatric child and adolescent program. Well, it was transformative because I look back, my mindset was most of these kids are out of control kids. So my main job was to control them. I learned quickly that these kids were not necessarily going to accept this goal. I had one boy who basically changed my life when he said, "You don't get it, do you, Brooks?" And I said, "Get what?" And he said, "We're going to outlast you." And my whole focus, it was very reactive rather than proactive. So much of the discipline was fairly harsh and arbitrary. And we were putting out one fire to another fire. So I had to step back. And also, I tell people very honestly, I was feeling very burned out. I was ready to leave after just a couple of months, which also got me interested in the first workshop I'm going to give, what helps us to be less stressed. And looking back, myself and my staff, we said, if we're going to survive here, and more than survive, if we're going to really help these kids, then we have to change our ways. And I realized how negative we were. I realized that these kids basically who felt very little control of their lives and acted up, we had to figure out ways for them to feel more of a sense of ownership in the school, even in a locked door unit of a psychiatric hospital. And one of the things I'm going to share, I know probably another question, especially in the afternoon, workshop, is what are some of the strategies that help kids to be more disciplined, be more respectful, be more motivated. Just to give you one idea, I really felt very strongly that if the kids are feeling that we're really just thwarting them and not giving them any room to breathe, that just in terms of discipline, which I'll be speaking about, we started wondering what would happen, if the kids made up some of the rules for the school. And some people thought we were crazy, but it was great. Not only did they make up rules similar to what the teachers would have, but because they made up some of the rules, they were more willing to follow them. And so what I want the audience to hear is this transformation. One, what helped me and my staff feel less stressed? Two, how can you turn a unit, a school, where no one wants to be, even in to a place where people want to work, and the kids want to be even in a locked door unit of a psychiatric hospital. And I'm going to share some of the ideas, and that's why I say it was transformative, to start looking at the strengths and beauty of each student rather than their diagnoses or what's wrong with them.
Right. So I think the education system and the mental health system has really benefited from you hanging in there all those years at the locked unit of a psychiatric hospital.
Well, thank you. I know personally, I can laugh about it now. I don't know what my career would have been if I very seriously was considering leaving after 2 months. I still would have been a psychologist, but my interest in the interface between psychology and education may not have been as elaborated as much as it has been over the years.
Excellent. Now, much of your work is focused on the concept of resilience and what helps both children and adults bounce back from adversity. You have especially emphasized the importance of a charismatic adult in the lives of children. Could you explain what you mean by charismatic adult, especially in terms of the lifelong impact that teachers have?
Yes, it's when more and more research was taking place in terms of resilience, when psychologists interviewed people, adults who had overcome great adversity, some who had grown up under racism and poverty, some who had grown up in abusive homes, some who grew up just failing in school, and now were doing relatively well in life. And they ask, what do you think was the most important thing in your childhood or adolescence to help you to bounce back? In every study that was ever done, Jack, the first answer was always there was at least one person along the way who truly believed in me and stood by me. And the late psychologist Julius Siegel, in an article he wrote more than 30 years ago, he called that adult a charismatic adult in a child's life. Some people are taken aback by the word charismatic, but putting that aside, the definition for me is poetic. A charismatic adult is an adult from whom a child or adolescent gathers strength. And in his article, he said in a surprising number of cases, in the research he did, the charismatic adult in a child's life turns out to be a teacher, especially if they come from a home that is not very supportive or encouraging. This is very important because when I started to read this research and report it, there were teachers who came up to me and would say, I know I've been important, but I didn't realize the lifelong impact I can have. It also led me, which I'll be discussing during some of my presentations, for teachers to consider when they were students, who were charismatic teachers in their lives? What did those teachers say or do that made them that way? Also, I can smile when I say this. One teacher once said to me, if they're charismatic adults or they're anti-charismatic adults, which were people who were not very supportive, who could even be abusive. And so I say to teachers, think about a teacher you may have had who was not supportive, who was an anti-charismatic adult. What did they say or do? And then I always pose this question. Are you using your memories of both charismatic and anti-charismatic teachers to guide what you do today? Because I say, imagine if I interviewed your students a few years from now and told them about charismatic and anti-charismatic teachers, how would they describe you? And it gets teachers to think about each and every day, what kind of impact do I have? How do I use my experiences from the past when I was a student to guide what I do today? Many teachers have told me those questions get them to reflect on their teaching style, how they relate to kids, how they really provide a very supportive environment in their classroom so kids could learn more effectively. Mm-hmm. And so I always say to teachers, remember, everything you say, even one comment, people will hold on to, your students, for years and years to come. And so it's a very important concept. And it's also very reassuring, the impact one person could have in terms of guiding the trajectory of a child's life.
Right. I recall in one of your workshops, one of the participants had a question that they asked you, and the question was, can you be a charismatic adult to other adults?
Oh, yeah. Again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, that's a wonderful question. I'm glad you brought it up, because when someone asked me that, they put in terms of, do we as adults need charismatic adults, and can we be charismatic adults, as you say, to others? And it was right at the time I was writing the book, The Power of Resilience. What I say is, at all points in our lives, we hopefully will be charismatic adults, and we need charismatic adults. Unless, I kid sometimes, unless you've decided to be a hermit living just in a cave somewhere, we all need that. And why your question is so important to me is, I often say to teachers and to school counselors, psychologists, how do you support each other in a school? Because one teacher can be a charismatic adult for another. Yeah. And the more we all feel we're gathering strength from different members of the school environment, the better that school environment will be. Yeah, so at all points of our life, we should be a charismatic adult, and we should have charismatic adults in our lives. And I'm going to talk about the power of that.
Excellent. In your afternoon workshop, now you're offering a repeat of your afternoon workshop at the conference to allow participants to also attend some of the other workshops with other presenters. So I think it's an excellent format. and you intend to discuss specific strategies that schools can implement to reinforce learning, intrinsic motivation, caring, self-discipline, and resilience in students of all ages. Can you provide a couple of examples of these strategies?
Yes, and I want to thank you for allowing me to do the same workshop on all 3 days for the very reason you stated. So, because there you have excellent speakers, you always put together great conference. So,
Thank you.
if people want to hear my workshop, at least the other 2 days, they can hear the workshops offered by others. But the afternoon workshop, for me, will be an opportunity to really build upon what I first learned in that psychiatric hospital. And just to give you and the audience a flavor for a few things, I use the concept of mindsets a lot. So I'm going to talk about the mindset and strategies of really charismatic teachers so that they create environments in which students want to learn. And just to give one of the most prominent examples, when I was writing one of my first books on school climate, I actually gave out a questionnaire that was filled out anonymously and asked people, of all the memories you have of school, what is one of your favorite memories? Something a teacher or another adult in the school said or did that boosted your motivation and your dignity. Because I was very interested, what do people remember that was done for them that really helped to motivate them? And one of the most prevalent responses was when they were asked to help out. Like, I remember when I tutored a younger child. I remember when I passed out the milk and straws. So I'm going to give a number of wonderful examples. I call them wonderful. I mean, they didn't come from me. They came from, teachers who enlisted kids in helping others. And I'll also mention some research of situations where kids who were ready to drop out of school were asked to read to younger kids and then ended up not dropping out of school. Because when you feel you're making a positive difference in the school, it really develops your sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. You feel you're making this difference, and it actually helps you to be more resilient and more motivated in school. So I'm going to look at some very concrete examples. The other thing is, as you know from my previous talks, back in the early 1980s, I coined the term islands of competence.
Yes, yeah.
It was another way of saying areas of strength. And I'm gonna also show a couple of video clips and some scenes of lobbies where schools had kids, different schools had kids draw their strengths or islands of competence, post them. And this, again, is a very concrete way of creating a strength-based approach. So the moment kids walk in, they see their islands of competence displayed. So I'm going to look, one of the things I'm going to look at is what I call contributory activities. Do you feel you're making a positive difference? I'm going to look at islands of competence. I'm going to also share a theory of motivation. What are the main things when we set up classrooms? What are some of the main components we should be looking at to create so that kids will be more motivated? I'm also going to share some ideas about how I would restructure the first couple of days of school, not worry about academics at all, but rather creating the foundation for kids to want to really learn from us. And since it's all afternoon workshop, there'll be plenty of time for questions and comments, which I also would look forward to. And people will have heard my keynotes, so they'll also have some ideas how the keynotes tie to the afternoon session.
Well, thank you, Dr. Brooks, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know it's going to be a special conference. Having you there to share your knowledge and wisdom for 3 whole days. And I look forward to seeing and working with you at the conference in Calgary.
The feeling is mutual, and I'm looking forward to all the people who attend, because I've always, as I said, had a very good time at your conference. And it's always a very warm and responsive audience, very fair really to learn. So thank you for inviting me, Jack.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Brooks. Dr. Brooks will be presenting at the School Focus Mental Health Conference in Calgary on May 11th, 12th, and 13th this spring. And we hope to see you at this very special event. So bye for now. Okay, thanks, Bob.
Thanks. I hope
Thanks
it's
for doing this.
I'll
I'll send you a link once it's done.
Oh, good. Great. I can post it also and send it, send it out. Okay.
Oh, that'd be perfect. That'd be great.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'll be edited, so
I can
Maddie
post-
will be editing it.